Let's go order 104 and again with calling the roll. Treasurer Ball or designee is Lauren Ferguson.
Present.
Thank you. Representative Danny Bentley. Mr. Big Brown. Ms. Karen Butcher.
Here.
Mr. Carlos Cameron. Here. Secretary Friedlander or in his stead, Dr. Brenzel.
Present.
Thank you. Director Van Ingram.
Here.
Ms. Von Purdy.
Here.
Mr. Jason Root.
Here.
Actually, Dr. Jason Root.
Still here.
Sorry about that. Dr. Sharon Walsh.
Here.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Our business meeting schedule for now through June is April 11, May 10, June 13, 2023. All times are at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. All meetings are scheduled to be held here at 1024 Capitol Center Drive, Suite 200, Frankfort, Kentucky, 40601. If everybody would please take a moment to review the minutes from the February 14th meeting. Make sure that they accurately reflect business that was undertaken at that time.
Can you go back over those meeting dates for the rest of the year?
April 11th, May the 9th, and June the 13th.
Okay.
We've not said,
I thought I heard you wrong.
it very well maybe I spoke wrong. That happens sometimes.
There doesn't have to be wrong.
Everybody had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any proposed provisions or discussion of their contents? No discussion or proposed revisions. I'd now entertain a motion to approve the minutes as drafted. Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, here none. Minutes as drafted have been unanimously adopted. And now it is my pleasure to introduce a gentleman that I've known for a number of years now, Dr. Timothy Chris. Dr. Chris is a neurosurgeon who has been in practice in the state of Kentucky for quite some time now. I don't want to steal the thunder from him in terms of sharing a brief snippet of his biography, but I asked him if he would to come here to share a practitioner's perspective on current prescribing practices as they relate to opioids, as he sees those practices playing out in his physician practice. And I think many of us are under the impression that there were a number of statutory changes as well as regulatory changes made that had a substantial impact on the dispensation of prescription opioids in a way that was perhaps a little too indiscriminate, whether it was by virtue of the conditions for which the prescriptions were issued or the volume of medication given at any one time. And so, Dr. Chris, without any further delay, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Ryan. I've been practicing neurosurgery in Kentucky for about 25 years, not counting my 6 years of training at UK. So I'm familiar with prescribing patterns. Neurosurgery is basic. Most of neurosurgery in terms of what we see is painful. Back pain is a lot more common than brain tumors. Neck pain is a lot more common than traumatic brain injury. Carpal tunnel syndrome is a lot more common than other things. So most of what the typical neurosurgeon sees is people who want to get out of pain, whether it's their neck or their back or their pinched nerve down their arm, pinched nerve down their leg. And only a small percentage are the dangerous things, the traumatic brain injuries, things like that. So I'm not a pain management doctor, but I'm on the front end of making the diagnosis. And then more recently in my later career, most of what I do is expert testimony. And so basically people ask me, they give me complicated cases and they ask me, what's going on with this patient? Okay. A lot of these patients are on long-term narcotics and a lot of these patients are not doing well. And so people ask a question. this guy's been on these opioid narcotics, he's been on this dose, been this deep. We're just curious, do you think that that's working? Do you think that it's a very common question? The original problem is usually back pain, it can be leg pain, but it's somewhere in the neurosurgical thing. So they say, well, let's what do you think? So I get the advantage of seeing the patient. I get to talk to them. I get to find out what's actually going on. Okay, I get to examine them, but I get the advantage of seeing all the medical records. Okay. In clinical practice, even with the electronic medical record, the only thing that you could ever really pull off are like the ER records are shared through that system. Okay. But otherwise, typically you don't have the records as a specialist when you see the patient. You're relying on the patient to tell you what's going on. So when I get to do these expert evaluations, I get to see all the records. And typically on the surface, everything looks hunky-dory. But when I actually start to dig into what's actually going on with the patient, what's actually going on with the prescribing, it's pretty amazing sometimes what you find. So that's my background, that's my experience. Okay, so I see a lot of these folks who are in chronic pain. A lot of them are on narcotics, and I'm asked, is there a better way to treat this patient? Is this appropriate? Things like that. Okay. I'm sure people here understand what opioid addiction and opioid dependency is about, but I want to describe it in a way that makes people understand the part of the dynamic as to how difficult this problem is to treat at the downstream, at the end point where you're treatment, not at the front point, which is the addiction, okay, the medical condition, okay. Addiction to opioids is a behavioral diagnosis, okay. I can put a patient on super high dose opioids, and that can be perfectly appropriate, okay. And I can do it for long term if they're not having the behavior of addiction. And what that is the patient reprioritizes their life to obtain the drug. Okay. The first thing that they'll sacrifice to obtain the drug is their job performance, their lifetime, their regular function in life. People will see that they're not functioning well. They're getting problems at work. The next thing to go that they will sacrifice to get the drug is the job itself. Okay. Then they'll start to sacrifice their friends, and their friends will start dropping off as they continue to use, continue to seek drug. Then they'll lose their family. Then they'll lose their spouse. And if they get low enough, they'll lose their life. Okay. So that's the progression that addiction drives people through. A different drug of choice, could be opioids, could be, other things. But depending on how far along that ladder is, it's a reprioritization of what's important to that patient. And it's beyond their control. It's just how much are they going to sacrifice before they do a long, long time. And the patient's used to it, the doctors are used to it, the family's used to it, their community's used to it. All right. Now it's kind of set. All right. Now it's set. And there's also a psychosocial component to it where you've been on it so long, if you came off the opioids, that means you weren't hurt in the first place, or why aren't you working? Okay. So there's a huge psychosocial component to this within families and communities where people don't want to come off the opioids because of because what it means to their original injury. And a lot of these people are not working. And most of them are on Social Security, okay? Disability Social Security for occupation. So by medical definition, the demand on a case-by-case basis is varying degrees of insatiable, okay? I personally believe that that's where you have to treat the problem, is at the demand side. Brian approached me because he thought that I would have insight onto the supply side, which is prescribing. Okay. So what's in it for the patient is they get their drug of choice. Okay. That's the priority in their life. They will sacrifice what they need to get that. Okay. What's in it for the prescribing physician? In the old days, you had your family doctor write your medicines, or maybe he referred you to, a rheumatologist or some specialty who is a little bit more comfortable with your condition, and they would prescribe it, and you'd have more of a doctor-patient relationship. What I've seen change is that with best of intentions, from legislation, from social pressure, from fear of prosecution, there's a lot of different things, but the prescribing habits, the family doctors, the primary care doctors, a lot of the specialists, they're not prescribing anything. Why would you? Okay. You've got to see the patient every month. You've got to get toxicology testing. You got to do pill counts. You got to do compliance. You got to get a contract with the patient. All of these things take time and effort and money. You have to have a lot of labor and a lot of staff to deal with that. If you're a family physician in a small town in Kentucky, you aren't geared up for that. Okay. And then there's always the risk of prosecution. And you make an example of one physician, and certainly there are physicians who deserve it. Okay, they deserve to be hung out and dried for their prescribing practices. But you see what happens to that physician, and you got, Jesus, what if that happens to me? What if I get, what if someone accuses me of that? So there's really, the family doctors have really just stopped prescribing. And what you see is, you see it in the medical record as so-and-so has legitimate pain. I'm not even going to try and tackle this. Boom, pain center. Okay, all righty. Surgeons, I operate on them. They're not doing well. Pain center. All righty. All righty. I saw them. I evaluated them. It's not surgical. Pain center. Okay. So what's happened, all righty, in my experience, is that supply side of this equation has gone from family doctors and first line doctors to pain management centers. And what we've done is we've centralized the prescribing habits. We used to have 10 doctors prescribing in this county, and now they're all driving over to the closest pain center. Or they'll drive 8 counties over to get the pain center that gives higher doses or is a little bit more lenient, or they'll drive out of state sometimes to do it. So we've centralized the prescribing habits now, and we've specialized it. The incentive for the pain management doctors, okay, they can, patients come in, you give the patient the benefit of the doubt, they're in pain. We want to treat that pain. The intent is to treat the pain. It's morally, perfectly fine. They can sleep well at night. But the economic incentive, okay, is to see more patients. Okay. Each of these patients has to have a monthly visit to renew their narcotics. Most of the pain centers do toxicology testing. Toxicology testing is very expensive. Okay. The reimbursement for the toxicology is quite good. Okay. And so what's happened is, not only have you centralized it, but you've automated it. Okay. Because the family doctors and the regular doctors don't want to deal with all the documentation that's required to prescribe narcotics long-term to a non-cancer patient. Okay. And the population I'm talking about is benign pain. And when the doctors say benign or non-cancer pain, cancer patients, you put them on opioids, you don't care about the long-term consequences. You just want to treat the pain because they're not going to live long enough to get, you just treat the pain. Okay. So it's a completely different population. So it's always non-cancer pain that we're talking about. Okay. 2 different populations. What happens is the pain centers, they hire the staff. They've got they've geared their electronic medical record. They've trained their people, all the magic words. Okay. And I see the patient and I say, when you went to the pain management doctor last time, what happened? I filled out a form. Okay. So now they got the patient doing the data entry. You got the patient doing all that for them. Okay. Then he says, well, who saw you? I saw a nurse. Okay. Did you see the doctor? No. When's the last time you saw the doctor? I don't know, 6 visits, 4 visits, 10 visits. Okay. So you've got physician extenders seeing most of these patients. You got 1 MD, and you've got anywhere from, 2, 4, 8. when I review the records, I have to catalog whose records I review. And it gets really tedious when they go to a pain center, because I have to write down nurse practitioner Smith, nurse practitioner Jones, nurse practitioner Wazinski, nurse practitioner Pollard, nurse practitioner this. And I write down all their names, they're all the same pain center. Patients seeing different person every time, okay? And the notes are always exactly the same. It's word for word. Patient says they spent 10 minutes with me, 5 minutes with me. I look at the record, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages. Okay. It's the same thing that's happening with Medicare, which is the doctors are being paid for documentation, not for treatment. Okay. And you talk to the patient, and this happens with surgeons too. Well, how long do the surgeons spend with you? 5 minutes. And I look at the note, and it looks like they spent 7 hours with it. Okay. So the incentive for the doctors is they're terrified of getting audited. They're terrified of getting in trouble. All right. The electronic medical record is your worst enemy, because they hit a button and they literally lift. I mean, it is, when I read the pain management records, and I mean, it is not uncommon for me to read 1,000 pages of pain management records. Okay. I did that 2 days ago. All right. One patient. Okay. A couple years of pain management, 1,000 pages. And everybody else looked at the records and said, well, you know, it's the pain, but he's compliant, everything's going great, his pain's controlled, it seems all on the board. I sit down and I just go through and I go, it takes me about 20 minutes to figure out of the 7 pages of each visit, what is actually changing, what is actually going on with this patient, because it's the electronic medical record is completely chock full. Every single visit, every single pain management record that I've reviewed, with almost no exceptions in the last 10 years, they all have the magic words. Patient is compliant. Patient toxicology is compliant. Patient's pain is controlled. Objective patient activities of daily living. Medicines are working. Okay, everything's hunky-dory. All righty, but I look at that and I go back and I say, what's really going on? And I go back to, well, let's see. They doubled the narcotics at that 4th visit. They doubled it. Pain rating stayed the same. That's a problem. Okay, it means the narcotics are not working. Okay, very common. I would say more than half the time. The electronic medical record will say that the patient is compliant with their toxicology. I go back and I look at the toxicology, not every visit, but 1 or 2 or 3 visits out of a year or 2. I will go back and the toxicology test is negative for what they're being prescribed. They're not taking the prescribed medicine. Or, okay, so there's 2 kinds of non-compliance. You're not taking what the doctor wrote you. Okay. You're written for oxycodone or hydrocodone and it's not showing up in your tox stream, or your oxycodone showed up, but so did marijuana and so did benzodiazepines, Valium. Okay, so you're either taking something not prescribed that shows up in your tox stream, or you're not taking what the doctor wrote for you. Okay, it is extremely common. And the first few times I saw this, I was just like, no, they can't be doing this. But to me now it's just old. It's just old rabbit. The pain centers, they're so automated. Okay, they have to be. They have to be in order to process all the patients and all the prescriptions and to still make money, to be efficient. Okay, they're so automated with that electronic medical record. Electronic medical records are going to say that they're compliant. They don't have to check that box. It just prints. And you go right back to you flip through it and you look at the toxicology report. The toxicology report says, Mr. Smith did test positive for his 40 milligrams of hydrocodone prescribed every single day that he's been on for 10 years. And the record says, if you just read the pain management record, everything's hunky, patient is compliant. But if you go back and look at the toxicology, they're not compliant. I see this all the time. All the time. Okay. Then the second phase is once it gets past that first visit where they did the toxicology test, because your toxicology test might not come back the same day. they've got to go back and check, and I think that's where it's dropped. Okay, I think they fired it off and they think it's done. It's like, well, you need to check it. They might be compliant 3 or 4 times in a row. Okay, but remember, they know they're being tested. I mean, they're going to see your pain doctor once a month. Take your hydrocodone the day before, but they still test negative. Okay, so we know the drugs aren't going into the patient because the test will be positive for 2 to 3 days. The amount of time that I see, it's more than 50% that the big pain centers are saying they're compliant and they're not. They may be compliant. You know, they did 15 toxicology tests, but 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, they're not compliant with the prescribed medications. The medical record says they're compliant and just keeps right on going, and so are the prescriptions. And so it's like a detective story every time I go through the pain management records to find out what's really going on. You have to look at so because of the electronic medical record, they can print out the 5 or 7 pages because all the prescriptions have changed to one pain management center. They're centralized, they're automated, they're specialized, and sadly, because in general, the pain management doctors are going to keep prescribing, okay, until someone tells them not to. Okay, some of these people, their pain condition is so set and so old that no one's ever going to really make the mental or moral effort to re-examine and say, maybe this isn't the right thing here for the patient. Okay, the vast majority of those, the same records that say everything's hunky-dory with compliance are the same records that say their pain is controlled. I go back and look at the pain ratings. Okay, now 0 to 10. Okay, 10 is the highest pain you could ever have, 0 is nothing. Alrighty. Well, I look at pain's controlled, but medications are working. And when they show up in the pains, well, their pain's rated 9. Their pain's rated 8. Sometimes 10. Right. Now in my book, 8 or 9 out of 10 average pain rating is not controlled. Okay. But the record says, the EMR, the electronic medical record says it is controlled. But the pain rating, what the patient says my pain's not in control. Okay. That's the subjective control of pain. That's how you are the pain medicines working? Okay. That's subjective. Does the patient feel like the pain medicine is working? What about objective? Okay. Are they working? Most people are not working. Okay. Are they productive? Are the activities of daily living? All the pain management records say the pain medicines allow them to do their activity of daily living. I interview the patient. I say, describe for me your typical day. Well, I can barely get out of bed. It takes me an hour to get out of bed. Okay. My wife fixes, I go, do you do any housework? Oh, I can't do housework. I've got too much back pain. I said, what do you do? I said, well, I sit on the porch. Okay. Or I sit and watch TV, or I sit on the internet. I go, well, do you do any exercises? Nope. Do you walk? Just, yep, I do. I go for walks. I go, how often? I go down to the mailbox. I go, how often? Twice a week. I go, how far is your mailbox? 20 yards. Okay. So pain management guys say, well, he's doing his activity of daily living. When you actually talk to the patient, they're not. So the electronic medical record is propagating the false documentation that the medicines are allowing them to pursue their activities and perform their activity of daily living. But if you talk to the patient, and sometimes it's right in the medical records because the first 6 pages of the medical records all automated and Xeroxed. It's the last paragraph that tells you, typically somewhere buried in there is what's actually going on. And it says, oh, he had trouble with his, something today, or his pain changed a little bit today. It's 1 sentence. That's the only thing that's changed from visit to visit to visit. So occasionally you'll see that where he'll say, oh, he was able to do something. He was able to do something a little bit more today, or he was bedridden for a week. You'll look at that note right there. And then the same note that says he's bedridden for a week says that his pain's controlled and he's doing his activity of daily living because they hit the button to reproduce the electronic medical record. So the electronic medical record, unfortunately, if you centralize the prescribing, if you automate the prescribing, if you specialize it, you're going to get facilitation of it. You're going to get increased prescriptions. In my opinion, it's easier for these patients to get the prescriptions than in the old days, because in the old days, they had to convince the family doctor who knew them that they really needed these medicines and that they're working. Okay, now family doctor says, I'm not going to deal with this. All right, I'm not going to deal with it. Go, I'm going to send you to the specialist. He'll take care of you. They see a physician extender. They get processed. Once the first note's generated that describes their pain and their exam, that note is just replicated over and over and over and over. I mean, I've seen them for 20 years, where and sure enough, buried in there, they'll be non-compliant. You actually talk to the patient, they're not functioning. So you have a patient who's on high dose opioids, is non-compliant, has a little bit of Valium thrown in there, a little bit of marijuana thrown in there, which of course violates that's high risk. And that's, that's what kills people, is when they're on a baseline dose of opioids and they take another drug or take too much of the drug. That's when you get your accidental overdose. And their quality of life is terrible. They're sitting in a chair all day. Okay, they don't do anything all day. They're not working. They're not productive, and they're just going every single month. And the pain management doctors, the documentation looks great. They're getting paid for their toxicology. They're getting paid for their doctor visits. Okay, it's just a giant machine that keeps on running. And the degree to which the documentation is divergent from reality is nothing short of stunning. And the only way that you can do that is if somebody sits down and slogs through all the pain management records, finds out where the key actual parts that are changing are, and goes back and compares them. And they say, okay, toxicology from February 28 was compliant. Well, let's go check that. Well, no, toxicology from February 28 was not compliant. Well, it's in the electronic medical record. It gets propagated. Now you have a compliant patient who's actually non-compliant and getting continuous opioids. Okay. All right. I watched a documentary one time on Detroit teachers, and they couldn't fire the bad teachers. So they called it the dance of the lemons. Okay. If one school district would take all their bad teachers and transfer them to the other, and the other school district would transfer their bad teachers, and they would trade all the teachers that need to be fired. Okay, so you'd inherit your lemons and you'd get rid of their lemons, and they would just go like this. Okay, when the pain management doctors actually check the toxicology and actually check to see if they're compliant, and they catch the patient and they say, well, wait a minute, we're prescribing high dose hydrocodone for you every single day, and you're not taking it. Okay, well, we're not going to prescribe that anymore. You're fired. Okay, we're not going to not write any more prescriptions from you. You violated your pain management contract. Because all these pain management centers have a contract. If you don't take the medications as prescribed, we're not going to prescribe it for you. If you take non-prescribed medications, we're not going to prescribe for you. If you get medicines from anybody else, we're not going to prescribe for you. So the patient knows that up front. That's the standard narcotic contract. They violate the contract. They weren't compliant. Pain management center says they do the right thing. No more controlled substance for you. What happens? They go to another pain management center. Don't need to. Don't need to. As long as they have someone in paying for the narcotics. Okay. As long as they've got anybody else paying for the narcotics, they can go anywhere they want. They can go to the street, but it's better if you're on workers' comp to just get it from another pain center. And what happens is, I don't know how to solve this, but it's like it gets wiped clean. It's like it never happened. And they go from pain management center 1 where they're fired, and they go to pain management center 2, and they start them up again. And they do it all over again. And it's like, well, what's the point of the compliance if the system actually works and we just transfer them to the next pain center? And I've never seen a pain center refuse to take a patient who was non-compliant at another pain center. And I understand the compassion of it, but you're not helping the patient when you're continuing to prescribe controlled substances and they're non-compliant. And you're not helping the patient when you continue to prescribe controlled substances when they're causing problems for the patient and they're not working. Okay, so it's like, it's the easy fix. It's easier to prescribe than it is not to prescribe. and to admit the problem and deal with it. So you've got insatiable demand, you've got centralized, automated, specialized, facilitated. This is the new paradigm. Sadly, they're being, okay, if you pay someone for documentation, you're going to get what you pay for. You get great documentation. You get 10-page pain management records from an EMR. But then if you actually talk to the patient and if you actually track the medications and you actually track the toxicology, it is just absolutely stunning. The medication prescriptions are not what they say they're prescribing is not what they're actually prescribing many times. They're non-compliant many times, and they're saying the pain's controlled and it's not. So whether the measure of success, are the opioids working? Subjectively, pain ratings typically is always controlled, otherwise pain management wouldn't write it. But sometimes it is, but a lot of times those pain ratings are sky high. Objectively, these people are not working, they're not active, they're not doing activity of daily living, they're not doing chores, they're not doing exercises, they're not doing anything. So in terms of actually other outside people saying, are those pain medicines helping that patient? Typically 0. Okay, so you've got high pain ratings, you've got no function, and you're on chronic narcotics. So that is complete lack of efficacy. Now, is that a surprise? No, because there is not a single medical study on the planet that has ever shown that long-term narcotics are effective in treating chronic non-cancer pain. Not one. And that's not just true for objective measures. That's not just true for productivity, employability, activity, daily living, and physical activity. Things that other people can track. That's also true for subjective pain ratings. The longest one I've ever seen is 6 weeks. Okay, now there's a reason for that. Okay. Narcotics, the longer you take narcotics, the complications are cumulative. Okay. The efficacy is the exact opposite. The efficacy is like alcohol. Your body, if your body keeps seeing these narcotics every day, your body's going to break them down faster. Okay, so that's called, the doctors call that tachyphylaxis. Your body gets used to the drug. Okay, so when you start to get out 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year on narcotics, your body, it's just like an alcoholic. Okay, it's just like if you're pounding the alcohol every day for a year, you're gonna what? You're gonna hold your liquor, right? And that's why an alcohol naive patient can have 2 beers and be intoxicated clinically, and an alcoholic can be very functional. And in medical school, you know, we were always taught alcohol level 0.1, you're intoxicated, you can't drive. 0.2, you're really impaired, you're confused, you're slurring your words. 0.3, you start to get sleepy, obtunded. 0.4, you're in a coma, and 0.5% alcohol, you're dead. Okay, so if 0.5% of your circulating blood volume is alcohol, you're dead. I can remember when I was a intern, and I saw a guy come in the ER, and he was drunk, but he's up and he's walking around, he's just a little drunk, and he's screaming and yelling, and his alcohol level is 0.55. And I'm just like, you know, that's the difference between book knowledge and clinical practice. And I'm just like, I asked, you know, my mentor, I go, how can he should be dead. He should be comatose. And he says, did you look at his ER record? I said, no. I said, well, how many times have you been here? I said, he's been drinking alcohol for, you know, 10 years. He is used to the drug. It doesn't work on him anymore. It's the same thing with the opioids. And that's why the efficacy always, every single human being on the planet, it's just a matter of degree. If you take narcotics long enough, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, they will stop working. That's why you see the pain management doctors cranking the dose up. They're trying to stop, they're just trying to get back to where they were the first time. Okay. So my point is, the longer you take the opioids, the less effective they are. And sadly, it's the exact opposite with the complications. Okay. The complications are cumulative. The longer you take opioids, the more complications you have. The longer you take opioids, the more severe each complication is. Okay. And there's lots of them. Okay. You get hypogonadism, low testosterone level, fatigue, erectile dysfunction, loss of libido. You get depression from narcotics. Okay. You get sleepy, you get decreased cognition, you get bladder retention, you get constipation, your immune system gets put down, your bones get osteoporotic. That doesn't count the behavioral complications. All right, addiction, dependency. How about overdose? How about death? Okay, so all the statistics that we read about from CDC are the very final endpoint, which is overdose and death. It's easy to measure if someone, dead or alive, thumbs up or thumbs down. But think about what each death represents in terms of all the other people who overdosed and didn't die. What's their cost? And how about the people that are on opioid narcotics and have never overdosed, but they're just one of these patients, and they're just on these narcotics all the time and they're not getting better? Think about the cost to them and their family. Okay, so that's the nature of the beast. That's how I've seen the problem change from primary care prescribers and first line prescribers to centralized, automated, specialized. And I think the degree to which this is true, my referrals are not random, but God, I see a lot of them. I mean, I've seen them from every single county, and I've seen them from every single pain center with very few exceptions. And there's certainly some good pain centers, and there's certainly some good pain management doctors, but as a group, it is just hard to, unless you've seen it, it's really hard for me to impress on you how bad this problem is, where we have tried to solve a problem at the supply end, and all we've done is redirect it and automate it and facilitate it. It is easier now for these patients to get the narcotics above board, okay, above ground. They don't need to go below ground. All they need to do is get into a pain center, all righty, and once they get past that first visit, now it's just a matter of who's paying for it. Do they still have insurance? Are they on workers' comp? Are they on SSDI? Are they on Medicaid? Who's paying for it? If someone else is paying for it and they're in the system and they got one doctor and they got 15, 20 people writing these scripts and they got 30 staff writing all this stuff, because it's all just automated. And all they got to do is hit that button for the electronic medical record, and it makes it damn near impossible for you all to see what's going on. And if you look at one pain management record, you can't tell what's going on because it's always hunky-dory. You've got to say, well, wait a minute, the narcotic dose changed 3 times. Well, wait a minute, his pain rating went up instead of down. Well, wait a minute, he used to be able to do this and now he can't. You have to compare, you got to slog through those records. And it's just buried. And it really makes it difficult for outside people to do that. Imagine the family doctor. You get the pain management ones, you've outsourced the narcotics and you get every single month, you get 10 pages. No, there's no way the family doctor is going to read that. And that used to be the last line of defense. The family doctor said, Joe, you've got a problem. We got to deal with this. But now they've outsourced it. Now it's automated. So think about the mountains, okay? Think about like the Rocky Mountains and the winter snows are melting and all that water comes like a gully washer, all right? I don't know if you've ever seen it in person in the springtime in the Rockies, but it's impressive, all right? The normal little trickle through the rocks, when the snow melts, it like the water level rises like 6 feet and it's just going everywhere. This on the demand side, you have a huge population of Kentucky people who, like it or not, you got this huge population on opioids. Their demand is varying degrees of, it'll be infinite as long as you keep prescribing. This is a torrent, okay? This is a roaring river of opioid demand. We, doctors, all right, the state of Kentucky, all right, people who say, oh, there's a problem in this area. We're trying to take care of this at the bottom of the mountain where this river is just roaring out of control. And all we've done with the prescribing legislation, I don't know what all legislation is. I don't understand all of it. I just know that the reaction of the family doctors is shut down and shunt to pain management. Okay, I just know what the effect is. All you've done is you redirected it. Okay, you haven't solved the problem. Okay, the demand, the nature of the beast, the behavior and the science is still there. Okay, you haven't solved it. What we're doing now is not working. When you look at it, the documentation looks great. until you burn down and dig down and find out the documentation is going to divorce from reality. And it's systematically divorced from reality. It's not one pain management doctor. It's not one pain management center. It's most of them. Okay. The incentives for the doctors and the pain management is to document. They'll document till the cows come home. Okay. The model for this is Medicare. Medicare is the same way. Okay. I got audited by Medicare. All righty. They sent out a 23-year-old lady, I guess fresh out of college with her sociology degree or something. And, you know, she started ticking off all these things on me and giving me all these things. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're gonna ruin my career. And I said, what are you all doing? And I said, and she said, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. I'm like, did you look at this? Did you look at that? Like, and so I had to walk her through the medicine. She reversed all the things she's going to tag me for. So I got like, well, Christ, they can do anything they want to me. I says, they don't know what they're doing. There's a fear of the doctors getting audited and losing their licenses. So there's a huge incentive to just make sure that the documentation is perfect. Okay. This goes for doctors who are not formal pain management centers, but who function like pain management centers, including surgeons. Okay, all righty. Some rehab guys do it, some surgeons do it, some other people. So there are people who function like a pain center, even though they're not listed as a pain center. So it makes it almost impossible for lay people to recognize that the problem has not been improved. The problem has been worse facilitated, that the river is more out of control than ever. The prescriptions are easier to get, they're more automated, and they're harder to detect. The final comment I want to make is that by centralizing the prescription habits into individual pain centers, my experience is you never catch these people on a Casper report. Okay, the Casper system is fabulous. Okay, it's one of the every state I think's got one. I mean, we have to have it. It's wonderful. Okay, but if you centralize prescription management and they sign a contract with this doctor, there is no reason for these patients to go to a second, third, or fourth doctor to get their meds. They just go every month to this guy and get their meds automatically, just like the EMR, just like the medical record says they should. Right. So, unlike the toxicology, I almost blow off the Casper reports because they're always kosher. Always. I can't remember Casper catching a patient who is multiple prescriptions. There's no need to go to multiple doctors if you can get a reliable. This is your new dealer. Okay, and alrighty, and it's just all you gotta do is show up. You can even flunk the urine test. You're still gonna get your drugs. Okay, so the Casper needs to stay, and it's great, and it will catch a few people, but it's not going to catch the people who drive every month to the same pain center and get their drugs from the same doctor or same group, because they have no need to go to a second or third doctor to get their drugs. So unfortunately, one of our best tools has been completely neutralized by centralizing and making this more reliable source of drugs for the patient. Okay. Questions?
Commission members.
Only questions I have answers to.
Questions for Dr. Chris.
Well, I have one. Go ahead, phone.
Who regulates the pain management?
The pain centers,
Who regulates? Are they regulated by the doctors that are paying?
they should regulate themselves, but it's not happening. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
There is not a central regulatory authority that I'm aware of in the state of Kentucky that pertains specifically to pain management centers.
Yeah.
Would be looking at your,
My understanding they're required by law to be owned by a physician, which allows then the regulatory process to be if that physician is not prescribing appropriately, the board of licensure, the
Board of Licensure.
practice would be able to close that in the clinic. Historically, prior to some previous legislation, they were owned by business entities who then would just get new doctors if their doctors lost their license. So there's been some, I think, requirement that they be owned by a physician, who then, if their license is suspended, you have the ability to close that specific pain center.
but in terms of any systematic review of pain management clinic practices or any sort of survey activity, that is not occurring at the state level on any systematic way. unless there's a report perhaps of aberrant prescription, maybe outside or the inside.
You mentioned at one point when you were outlining what's happening here, that if they're non-compliant and they're kicked out, we'll say, they go to another pain management doctor. You brought up Casper. I don't understand why, if I'm non-compliant here, I go someplace else, this second place sees these records, why now I can just start afresh?
The patient gets the letter from payment manager number 1 saying you've been discharged. Right, we're not going to prescribe to you anymore. Here's a 2-week supply so that you don't go into withdrawal. And here's a list of people you can go get other prescriptions from if you want to, but we're not going to prescribe anymore for you. When they go to the new pain management center, most of the time the patient tells the second pain management center, I got kicked out of pain management center number 1. But typically the story changes just enough to make it believable. I rather than saying I was cut off because I just didn't take my meds. It was, also, they come up with an excuse.
There's a story.
Another
There's a
story,
story,
right?
okay.
And so just enough so that the second pain management says, oh, well, that's why they got kicked out. And now, boom, they're back in the system.
So it's a racket.
I would think so, because my first reaction, if they got kicked out of a pain center is, you're in a different category. I'm not going to just start prescribing for you.
My
I
second
think so.
question is, so if they're not, the toxicology report does not show any drugs in the system, then they're probably selling those drugs.
Where else would it go?
I don't know.
That's-
I just wanted
Yeah,
to make sure that my thoughts were on the right track.
Yeah, if I put diversion in one of my reports, everybody gets mad at me and I'm judgmental and I'm amoral and all that stuff. So I usually have my reports with, okay, they were prescribed this amount of narcotics on these dates. They were tested on these dates. They did not show up in their toxicology on these dates. Where are the drugs going? Not into the patient. And then I let them deal with it. Because, I would think that's diversion because the street value of these medicines is higher than the money they're getting from Social Security or from workers' comp. Way higher. I mean, occasionally I get to see the finances on some of the cases. I get to see the actual money, and I'm just like stunned that they're making $2,000 on their stipend. And I look at the amount of narcotics they're on, and they're not compliant. And I'm like, $10 a pill, $15 a pill. I says they can make twice that.
So let me make sure I understand. They're non-compliant. They're more than likely selling the drugs, but they still have pain.
Right. And that's one of my ways to prove that I use to prove that the pain is that there's a prescription problem is people kind of forget. If your pain rating is 9/10 on hydrocodone, 40 milligrams a day, 9/10 on hydrocodone, 40 milligrams a day, and then you test negative for hydrocodone and your pain rating is 9/10 again, well, you didn't have hydrocodone. Well, you just proved that the hydrocodone doesn't change their pain rating. So when they test negative for their prescribed opioids, you're not just proving non-compliance. If the pain rating is basically the same, you've also proved total lack of efficacy. In other words, there's no more indication for the medication in the first place. People forget that. They get all, ooh, non-compliance. We got to check the records. We got to, and out of fairness to the patient, you have to confirm the result because the toxicology screenings that people do, they're set to catch. They're set too low. Okay, doctors use the word sensitivity. In other words, they don't want people to slip through the system. You will get a lot of false positives. Okay, you will. Okay, so you need to send that screening test off for confirmation. The definitive ways for confirmation, like CSI, it's mass spectrometry. Okay, well,
Yeah.
all right. Mass spectrometry or liquid chromatography, those are molecule based. They're not screened. So that's the way. So you do have to confirm out of fairness to the patient that they weren't doing that because you'll pick up people that say they're not compliant and they are. So there is a caveat there. But once you've confirmed it and their pain rating is the same, you've shown that they're not taking the drugs. The pain rating is the same. You've shown the drugs aren't working. Their pain rating is no different on drugs, off drugs. And you've shown that it's not in their system, which means they're probably diverting. So it's a double whammy. And often someone else is funding it. Okay? I mean, then you tell somebody else, oh yeah, I'm making $2,000 a month. And all I gotta do is show up and pee in a cup once a month and tell my pain rating's 9/10. I mean, that's how you get that culture going for diversion. I mean, it's bad. It's a bad situation. It's a bad problem.
Any other questions from commission members? Dr. Chris, would you be willing to entertain some questions from our attendees here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
Do we have any audience questions for Dr. Chris based on the presentation given?
Yeah, one over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. You made excellent points and excellently described the problem. Do you have any recommendations for first step solution to this problem?
The first step solution is not to attack the supply side. Because the demand side is off the scale. And they will find a way to get their drug. That's the definition of addiction. They will find a way, whether you think you solved it, okay? Maybe, let's say you solve it with the pain centers, then it goes underground. You haven't solved it. Okay, they will find a way to get their drug. The truly addicted people, it is unless you've actually seen this in somebody personally, you cannot understand how that the ladder, the stepwise, I've seen it in my own patients, and I've seen it in guys who come work on my farm, where they used to be really good workers, and then all of a sudden they're dropped. It's just, I'm like, what the hell happened to him? And then you find out from his buddies, well, he started using it again. You know, so the supply side, in my opinion, cannot solve this problem. Processes of prescribing cannot solve this problem, in my opinion. In my opinion, you need to attack it at the medical side. It is a medical problem that manifests as a behavior that is uncontrollable. You have to treat the source, which is the addiction, in my opinion. You have to do something about the actual stuff. The problem is not in the ERs. I know there's legislation for the ERs. The ER doctors are very used to the addicts, okay? The first time someone comes in, they may fool them, okay? But the second time they come in, they're like, this guy's coming back again. And then the third time, so they know, the ER doctors know who the guys are. So the ER doctors won't prescribe after 1 or 2 visits, whether you legislate it or not, okay? There's no upside for them. We're giving lots of narcotics, okay? So the problem's not at the ER level. The problem's not at the family doctor level, because you shunted it to the pain management centers. The current procedure, but I predict that if you solve it at the pain management level, it'll go someplace else. I don't know where, but the obvious place would be underground. But it could go, it goes wherever it needs to, where there's incentive for the people to prescribe it, to get paid for the toxicology tests and to get paid for the documentation. And there's incentive for the people who are addicted that they have to have their drug no matter what.
To illustrate that point, and anybody who's a better historian on these events, feel free to correct me. But once there was significant clampdown on the issuance of OxyContin prescriptions, that was the beginning of our heroin epidemic here in Kentucky. Heroin replaced OxyContin once OxyContin clampdown occurred at the family practitioner level.
I mean, these people systematically, it's sad, they systematically, progressively destroy their lives to get the drug. So
Sorry.
they aren't going to respect law.
Well, yes, ma'am.
So I'm one of the people that you're talking about. I've been in the hospital doing what you say that people that use drugs do. What we need to be,
Clarify
what we
for me,
need to
man,
be doing is looking at the
What's one of the
solutions.
people? Are you an addict? Are you a doctor? Or
I'm not an addict. I'm a person who has struggled with opiate use for over 20 years.
you...
I do not call myself an addict. It does not define me. It's not what I am.
Okay.
So I'm a person that struggled for a long time, and I know from my own experience and from the work that I do that we need to be looking at the solutions and working with the people that you're talking about, and not clamping down on the prescribing. We need to look at the root cause of all of this.
I agree.
Not just that people are going back and drug seeking. And I'm sorry, your language is, for somebody that has struggled in my life, your language is incredibly offensive and judgmental and stigmatizing. And that is why we are in the situation that we are in. not because people are addicts and because they are drug seeking, but because we haven't done the work as a system and as a people to support the people that are struggling in a different way than somebody else
Well,
did.
I apologize for my word choice, but you all asked me
that's the
what my
thing.
solution is, and I said the solution is science and at the nature of the problem on the demand side, which is, I think, what you just said.
It's,
I think we're on the same page.
I think it's your language that is,
Now, I apologize. for
Throwing
my
me
language. Change,
but
change.
language is huge. It is a
Okay.
humongous issue, and that is something that
What was the language
lots of
that,
people- addict. Addict is just a really stigmatizing and
So
judging
use
word.
person first, is
Okay.
what she's saying.
Yeah.
Person with. addiction.
okay, I apologize. I wasn't aware
Substance
that that's a medical term, by the way. And that's a
I'm
medical
aware, but
diagnosis.
it's not, I'm a person.
It's opioid use disorder. That was the medical.
Well, that's
diagnosis.
DSM-5, but I trained in DSM-4.
There is,
That was
let
the-
me just interject and
Okay.
say,
I apologize for the language.
there is inadvertent friction between pure clinical language and what we as a society have evolved to understand as better language use. So with that, we'll build that bridge in this conversation. Yes.
We can agree, hey, I'm noticed. So, I won't use the language. The language doesn't change the problem, which is huge chunks of people in Kentucky are taking opioids. And the system, an attempt to fix the system hasn't worked, and that we need to address this problem. It's my personal opinion that you're gonna fail if you try to attack it at this end. I think it needs to be attacked at the front end. That's my opinion. Language notwithstanding.
So essentially, as you have said, we have had a legislative package that has been implemented over the years to address prescribing behavior as it pertains to narcotic medications. Those legislative fixes that have been aimed at stemming the supply tide have in fact generated a parallel system through specialized pain management practices that have the logistical ability to operate at scale very efficiently and have thus essentially resupplied what the family practitioners no longer supply, but at a higher rate.
Right.
I don't think that that's true. I
Okay,
don't think that the prescribing data for the state of Kentucky would bear that out. And I think
If
that
you go back and look, what we were prescribing in dosage units in Kentucky in 2012, we prescribe 100 million dosage units less now than we did 10 years ago.
so it's not like we're trading one for the other. We've made substantial progress in reducing unnecessary prescribing.
There are fewer pill mills available today than there once were. We look at prescribing within the Medicaid program, the number of 30-day prescriptions for wisdom teeth dramatically decreased. The number of 30-day prescriptions for ankle sprains dramatically decreased. The number of individuals postpartum normal vaginal delivery receiving narcotics 30 days. So we've made significant progress in decreasing the number of opiates prescribed. in
Yeah,
Kentucky.
and
That's all.
co-prescribing with,
That's a different animal.
Yeah, but
We're talking
we're talking about,
No.
he said no progress in opiate prescribing practice.
Yeah.
And we created this problem by.
and it's not all for
centralizing
acute
that
pain.
The problem was much broader than,
Well, I agree.
because most people do not die of prescription opiate overdose. They make a transition between opiate use to opiate misuse, opiate use disorder, and then they obtain an illicit supply, which then is lethal. So we were absolutely right. We need to understand what people are experiencing through this process and through this journey and interrupt that and make treatment available and make other alternatives available. Because I'm not sure that by decentralizing prescribing back to family practice, we're gonna fix. the
I'm not
problem.
advocating that. Okay, I'll leave it, I think it's a very difficult problem to solve. Okay, I think it's a very difficult problem to solve, but I just don't think you're going to, my experience is that it's worse at that level.
at the pain management practice.
Pain management, chronic level, that's my experience.
We have another question over here.
And I'm not a doctor or lawyer, just someone who's had experience with my parents who were addicted to opioids, and just thinking about whenever I gave birth to, I chose not to take my pain medicines because I grew up watching people die of heroin and all the opioid uses. So, but I would give my medications to my mother when she asked for them. So I don't like the criminalizing part of, most people trade their drugs. They give them to people or they trade them. I don't want to automatically assume Hearing, thanks for sharing that recent data about what we've seen overall. What we see directly is that less people are using them in those ways. But that pain management was meant to be temporary. And then there's levels and transitions of when it becomes abusive. So reminding ourselves that pain management, it is a part of the nature of folks trying to heal, but there should be a menu of services of different ways that people can process their pain and deal with their pain. And it's different for each one of us. And so being mindful that pain management to me will never heal in that way. It's not meant to, right? It's meant to help us get to a place of healing. And then as somebody who steered away from those drugs, even when it caused me pain not to take those drugs, I definitely understood that my mom was at a different level than me. She was in a different place, but my mother never went out and stole it, never went out and beat up somebody, never went out and did that. And then she switched to alcohol, and then now she's not on any one of those, but we're dealing with the health impacts of it, so much so that she just had back surgery a couple months ago, and she was scared to take the pain medicines because she wants to stay on the path that she's on. So just to be mindful that some of the people that you're talking about in your description are outliers. That's not, to me, the majority of them.
But if you remember, that was a question from the audience
Yeah.
that said, they're diverting? And I said, I learned not to use that because I don't know if they're diverting. It's difficult to prove diversion. And so I reach a conclusion, where is the medicine going? Not into the patient. I let other people sort that out. Okay, people, family, social workers, because all I can tell you is they're being prescribed a lot of medicine and it's not showing up in their system. And that's not my role to do that. I think you made a great point, which is that the intent of the pain management center is to address legitimate pain. If you start to fill the pain management center with chronic people who are not taking their medicines or who aren't benefiting from their medicines, now the pain centers are overwhelmed. Okay, and now people with legitimate pain in the pain centers aren't getting the detailed care that is required to sort out complicated problems like your mom's, where, so they're in a specialty place, but because the specialty place has responded to all the incentives to automate, centralize, specialize, facilitate, and all that, now the really legitimate pain patients are thrown in, and their pain management patient number 39 out of 45. How can you possibly address all that pain in those patients in one day? You can't. And so I think it's a missed opportunity to treat the pain. The people in these pain centers are a mixture. Okay, I'm talking about the people where the narcotics are not helping them. They've got complications. They're documented. They're still prescribing. They've got lack of efficacy. It's documented, or they're not compliant. I'm talking only about the people where it's clear that our narcotics are hurting them more than helping them for whatever reason. I'm not talking about the people who have legitimate pain and it's helping them. Okay. Big difference.
Any other questions, comments, dissent, and opinions? Hearing none. Dr. Chris, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Brian, I'll have to bill you.
All right. I'll get you out to White Castle.
Call you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move into the update that I have for the group. It's not going to be very extensive. We'll start with the complementary operation type fentanyl that is being headed up by Attorney General Cameron. The next fentanyl forum will be on March 15th, Whitley County at the Corbin Center, room 103. The address is 222 Corbin Center Drive, Corbin, Kentucky 40701. All times are 1 to 3 p.m. local time, whether that is Eastern or Central location. March 20 will be Simpson County at the Simpson County Historical Society and History Center, a place called the Meeting Room, 207 North College Street, Franklin, Kentucky, 42134. And then that will be followed by a forum on March 22nd in Greenup County, Greenbow Lake State Park Resort, Boyd and Carter Rooms, 965 Lodge Road, Greenup, Kentucky, 41144. And then April the 10th in Martin County at the Martin County Public Library, which has an address of 387 East Main Street, Inez, Kentucky, 41224. And then finally, Leslie County, at what is now to be confirmed as Rock House Baptist Church in downtown Haddon, again from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Briefly on the opioid conference, planning continues in earnest for that with a date anticipated in the third week of September. By the next meeting, there will be more details to share on that. And then most importantly, our application review and award process. As of today, there are a total of 65 completed applications. There are 260 in progress. The subcommittees have reviewed a total of 46. There are 25 applications that will be reviewed by the end of March. The total monetary ask for the completed applications, of which there are 65, equals $132,685,406.91. That is in the face of what is approximately $30 million to distribute in this calendar year. We have 200 applications yet to go. It appears as though my bet that we will be under $250 million was optimistic in terms of what that eventual total ask will be. I think I'm going to have to ask whether or not it's going to be over or under $500 million for your one. With that, I would now entertain a motion for adjournment into the subcommittees.
Can you share more about the opioid conference, what that will be? Is it for the commission?
The commission is going to sponsor an opioid conference that we are looking to target for the third week of September. That conference is to focus exclusively upon the opioid epidemic in Kentucky and what it is that we are trying to do to address it. We want to have national speakers. We want to have breakout sessions, make it an event that is consequential along the model of what the state of Indiana has done over the past at least 7 years. This was an idea that was brought to my attention by Commissioner Busher, that you learned about Indiana program.
So third week, we're also planning with a bunch of Kentucky groups, the Kentucky Movement Assembly, which is the 15th through the 17th in Northern Kentucky. So if whenever you get those dates firmed up or where it's going to be, would you let us know so that we can, I want to make sure that we can.
Absolutely, we sure will do that.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion made, seconded.
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, we go to adjourn subcommittees. When everybody's done, we'll come back and make the motion to receive it all next. subcommittee application review meeting schedule.
March the 17th, from 8 to noon.
March 17th, 8 to noon, treatment and recovery subcommittee application review meeting here. Okay. Anything else?
You have to vote.
Is there a motion that committee date and time be adopted?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is set March 17th, 8 to noon. Here at 1024 Capitol Center Drive, Suite 200, Frankfurt 40601. There is the potential that we would need to amend our regular business meeting date of April the 11th based on the necessity of appearing before a legislative committee on our regulations for approval of those regulations. We are awaiting word back from one of the committee co-chairs as to whether that is necessary. We have asked that they move the scheduled committee date from the legislature from April 11th to accommodate our regular business meeting. If for whatever reason that doesn't happen, Ms. Shavies or Ms. Telfair or Mr. Hornbuckle will be in touch with commission members regarding an alternate date for that April 11th meeting. Anything else related to that? At this time, we have arrived at the public comment and remarks section of the agenda. For those of you who are gathered here in the audience, are there any folks who wish to speak or deliver comments to the commission this afternoon? Do we have did you all have to sign up? I want to make sure we have the sign up sheet. We'll go on progression. And then for anybody who wishes to speak who is not signed up, there'll be an opportunity to do so. In fact, we have first Ms. Rita Crum and Rocky Massey, Dalton Hatfield, Bree Cox. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Rocky Massey, and I'm with Appalachian Regional Healthcare. And I'm here today in support of a very important project between ARH and Ascend. Dr. Don Forbes, I think, has presented to your subcommittee a lot of what that program is about clinically. But as a partner with it, I wanted to make sure that you've all understood the importance of that project, the ARH is as well. Again, I'm Rocky Mackey. I'm a 41-year employee with Appalachian Regional Healthcare. I serve as Vice President of External Affairs. I run 4 of our hospitals and supervise special projects across ARH. You may be aware that ARH was born out of a collaboration between the Appalachian Regional Commission and United Miners Hospital Association in the 60s. We're a not-for-profit healthcare organization that serves our patients in Eastern Kentucky and Southern West Virginia. We've got 14 hospitals, 6,500 employees, 120 clinics, retail pharmacies, and home care services. In Eastern Kentucky, ARH serves as a safety net provider in the communities we serve. In many cases, we serve as sole community hospitals, provide the people of Eastern Kentucky access, very important access to healthcare at their homes. Services from primary care to premier surgical specialties, and those other critical services for those which local access is so important. Cardiology, obstetrics, psychiatry, emergency care that are all immediately available in the communities we serve. ARH is proud to be here today in support of the Ascend project. And again, Dr. Forbes spoke with you all about that a few days ago. I see Eastern Kentucky as ground zero for neonatal abstinence syndrome. ARH and Ascend can partner and offer a program that can be impacted in that region. Want to improve outcomes for these babies, decrease cost of care, reduce intensive care admissions, reduce the numbers of transfers that are difficult for these families out of these rural communities. I also think it's very important to know that because of the work that's already been done, we can get this project propped up and up and running within 8 months. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all, and I'd like to introduce Rita Crum, our clinical specialist on this subject.
Good afternoon. My name is Rita Crum. I think I've introduced myself to some of you already. I'm the service line director for ARH, for women's and children's health. And so what that means is I work with our 5 birthing hospitals in particular, but also our clinics across the system in an effort to improve the services and the quality of care that we provide to our community first. I myself have been a nurse for, I actually have 20 years wrote on my paper, but it's been 22. 22 years, time goes by very quickly. So I've been a nurse myself for 22 years, and over half of those years I've spent at the bedside of the moms and babies that I'm talking to you about today, as well as been management of those particular units. I've lived in Eastern Kentucky my entire life, and I've not only seen the devastation of addiction and how it can cause issues with our patients that I have cared for, but also in my own family. I would like to share some baseline data with you about our 5 ARH birthing hospitals. As a system, 12.3% of our deliveries are opioid exposed infants, when the national average is 7 to 10%, depending on which source you reference.
Could you say that again, Rita?
12.3 is our percentage of deliveries that we have in our 5 birthing hospitals where the infants have been exposed to opioids. Nationally, 7 to 10, like I said, depending on the source of your reference. Some of our individual communities are as high as 22%. So 12.3 is all of those combined, but some of our individual communities are as high as 22% of infants. Our average length of stay for an NAS infant varies widely across our system, and it can be as high as an average of 24 days in some communities. The average length of stay for an infant given medication versus an infant that's managed with non-pharmacological interventions can be at minimum 8 days longer. Of those infants exposed to opioids in our hospital, 97% of those are covered by Medicare. ARH is transferring over 17% of our NAS infants outside of our system, which often means outside of our Eastern Kentucky communities and even out of state, because we lack the training and resources that we need to treat infants exposed to opioids during pregnancy. I most definitely want to mention that neonatal abstinence syndrome and routine narcotic administration to infants has not been widely studied. The available studies show a correlation between exposure to opioids and other narcotics and negative infant outcomes. Although we do not know the full extent of the long-term effects that narcotics have on the physical, mental, and cognitive development of children, it is reasonable to say that decreasing the incidence and duration of opioid exposure after birth would result in more positive long-term outcomes of infants. Partnership with NASCEND would allow ARH to focus on non-pharmacological interventions where appropriate. Recommended non-pharmacological interventions include low stimulation environment, swaddling, high calorie feedings, skin to skin contact, cuddling, and music therapy. It would also standardize and improve the assessment and treatment protocols of infants exposed to opioids for our system. The program would provide extensive training to not only those healthcare providers that directly care for moms with substance use disorder and their babies, but also related community partners in an effort to improve the quality of care, not only during birth and the hospital stay, but before and after. It breaks my heart to give an infant a syringe full of morphine every day. It breaks my heart to walk into a nursery and lock eyes with a night nurse who looks completely broken because she's holding an infant that's crying inconsolably for hours. She just does not know what else to do. And I'm sure if you personally have ever heard the screams and cries of a baby going through withdrawal, you know it's just infants exposed to opioids during pregnancy cannot self-soothe, so crying it out just does not. We have to do better. ARH in partnership with Dr. Forbes and the SIN can provide a higher quality of care to our infants exposed to opioids and other substances. However, we need your help because we struggle in most of our small rural communities to just keep our OB units open, let alone have the financial ability to implement a comprehensive program that focuses on education for everyone that touches the mom and baby, assessment tools that are less subjective, and treatment protocols that start with non-pharmacological interventions like music therapy before medications. I'm not saying we won't have babies that need medication while they're transitioning from a substance exposed environment after birth. But I am saying if we can implement a program that has already shown a significant decrease in the number of NAS babies that require medication, decrease length of stay and cost, and keep babies in the communities that they're born in. Well, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to teach my nurses, my providers, and my caregivers to do. That's what ARH wants to do. We want to take on this challenge and we want to do better. I thank you guys for your time and your consideration. I know your time is valuable and I appreciate your attention. As you make decisions regarding where and how the opioid abatement fund should be spent, may you not forget ARH's request and the tiniest, most vulnerable citizens in our Eastern Kentucky counties served by ARH.
Do you have any other folks who are here who wish to speak? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well, first, thank you all for your time. I apologize for not signing up on the list, but my name is David Hayden and I serve as the Senior Vice President for Clinical Services for Spiro Health. We have about 100 clinics in 6 different states. We have 32 here in Kentucky. I live here in Kentucky and practice counseling in Kentucky and have been able to see firsthand the impact that substance use disorders have not only on individuals, but also on families, on communities. And through treatment, I've been able to see the positive impact that treatment can have on those individuals, those families, and those communities. What I'm here today is to ask for your all support for funding for prescription digital therapeutics. We've been able to use those in our clinics, specifically Reset and Reset O, which is from Care Therapeutics, and found a tremendous benefit for our patients of being able to take the learnings that they've had in treatment in the clinic and use those outside of treatment hours. It allows that continuation of care. Reset and Reset O are the only FDA authorized safe and effective digital therapies for substance use disorder and opiate use disorder. It allows for 24/7 access to care. And again, what we've been able to see is the things that we can help our patients learn in counseling, they can continue to have access to outside of clinic hours. It's been proven to reduce hospitalizations, reduce ER visits in our patients and beyond. It is supported by ASAM, by SAMHSA, and the Federal Drug Control Policy. It is already covered therapy in 16 states. We know that CORE piloted Reset O in 3 locations, but any additional funding is needed to provide more equitable coverage to that department. I thank you all for your time and your consideration.
Hang on. Can you give some examples of what those do?
They do, well, they're a digital prescription, so our providers write a prescription to our patients for this. That prescription is then, they get a code, it's downloaded on their phone, so they have access to the app on their phone. There are modules, they're called behavioral modules that our patients would engage in, and they're all geared at having them learn additional skills to manage their recovery without using substances. And as they complete these modules, it's based on contingency management. So they get prizes, or they get a slap on the back saying, "Great job, congratulations," or they get little monetary prizes to continue going. So that's reinforcing. They're getting positive results right away, which encourages them to continue to stay engaged. That's one of the real benefits that, that treatment has is finding another way to engage with patients. They don't all benefit from all the traditional therapies, so finding additional things that they can access that they like and engage in provides another tool for helping people stay on that road of recovery.
So can you give an example of one of the modules?
Different ways to work on the way they think and approach situations, the way they manage behaviors, the way they make relationships.
So are you saying it's question and answer, it's scenarios? It's
There's-
case study?
Well, there's different things that do have question answers and things that they read and engage in and learn different skills along the way.
And then who pays for the monetary?
Who pays for
Where
the
does that
grants?
come
Well, that's where we're asking for funding for. To pay for it.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Could you
Thank
repeat
you all
the
for
name
your-
of your company?
Spiro Health, SPERO.
So do you have, you said you have 100 locations?
We have 100 locations in 6 different states. We have 32 here in Kentucky,
So do you-
and an outpatient basis.
So do you have a way of measuring this new technology or you just started?
We just started, but we do have ways of measuring. We have some really good results so far that shows our patients are staying engaged more in care for longer periods of time. We can compare that to individuals who don't have it and they're staying engaged more. Their drug screen results show a quicker reduction in all illicit substances by being engaged in it, and their functioning levels increasing, so they're being more engaged in their communities and with their families and doing more things to have them fit in those areas.
Are you representing the manufacturer of the app or are you representing your own health?
Both. We've used it. We would like to have it expanded, but we need more funding to have it.
Are you a consultant for paratherapy?
No, we used a lot of different, we tried several different digital therapeutics. We found them very easy to work with and they're the only ones that are FDA approved. And so we did pilot projects with several of them and we got really good results with them. So I came to speak on their behalf.
And am I right that Spiro provides counseling in-house?
We do.
Thank
In
you.
all our clinics, we provide counseling and case management services.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other speakers who are here today? Who did not sign up? Seeing none, we'll move to the updates and announcements, and I will defer to my colleagues first. Start with Dr. Brenzel. Do you have any updates or announcements to make this afternoon?
I do not.
Director Ingram?
No, sir.
Ms.
No.
Butcher?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Cooper?
No, sir.
Just the administrative regs update. We are currently scheduled for March 21st for the emergency regs hearing. Our regular regs have been deferred to the April meeting, so we are waiting.
That's that issue with the 11th. Once we have that squared away, we'll advise if there's a need to adjust our regular business meeting date of April the 11th. Ms. Purdy?
No.
Mr. Cameron?
The only announcement I'll make, National RX Summit, it's April 10th, 11th, and 12th in Atlanta this year. I will be there on the 11th with my boss. So if you have your meeting on, I'll be able to make it, but if anybody's not been, wants to attend, go online, register, it's a great event.
Tell us about it a little bit.
The National RX Prescription View Summit, and they've added heroin to it as well, was created by Operation Unite Back. In 19 years ago now. And it brings all professionals across the country with ideas, because we all don't have the greatest ideas. But I think you've been part of it. So it's an opportunity to go hear best practices, get things that we're hearing and seeing come here to the commission that's asking for help across the country. Hear a lot of success stories and some great speakers, some great breakout sessions. So look forward to being there again this year and missing you all if you're here.
We'll miss you as well. Thank you for sharing that information.
That conference is very Kentucky heavy, that I have. Yeah, I went to it first time last year and then finished it. Yes, excellent.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Ruth?
Nothing else to share, just on the heels of that, I believe I'll be down there as well at the RX Summit in Atlanta with Dr. Walsh maybe as well. He may be out, quite a few members. that day.
Yeah, I'll be there as well.
In band, yes.
So.
We can just have the meeting down there.
I changed my mind. I do have something. I just can't think of the name of it. I've been to it 3 times. It's March 28th and the Kentucky Chamber does it.
Yeah, workplace.
Workplace.
Recovery in the workplace.
Recovery in the workplace. And I've asked people in my community to attend with me and nobody's taking me up on it because I'd love to see more employers come to see what they can do for fair chance employment. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. March 28th, you'll be there. Have somebody sit with.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Walsh. The only thing that I have by way of update or an announcement is on behalf of Mr. Vic Brown, who sent me his apologies about his inability to attend due to an out-of-state conflict, but he also had the following that I'm just going to read exactly as he has sent it to me. He says, I have seen, as well as have been questioned by more than one member of the public as to the official name of the commission. As you know, the statute refers to the commission as the Kentucky Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission. However, I've seen it referred to by many different names. And I believe it would be very beneficial for it to be referred to with consistency in all matters of communication to ensure clarity for the public. If you'd be willing to bring this up on my behalf, I would greatly appreciate it. And as Vic properly points out, KRS 15-291, Section 1 says, I quote, there is hereby established the Kentucky Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission, period. The commission shall be attached to the Department of Law, which is also known as the Office of Attorney General for administrative purposes. That is the official name of statute. That's the name that I use. And for all official purposes, that is it. How about that matter of very important?
Yeah, right.
Anything else before we entertain a motion to adjourn? Thank you all very much for your presence, for your participation with Dr. Chris. What's a meeting without just a little bit of controversy and discussion?
Love it.
It was nice to put a little spice in the soup today, and we got that. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.